1. You say what you mean without sugarcoating it. You don't dress things up. Someone asks for your opinion, you give it, directly, honestly, without the 3 layers of cushioning most people wrap around the truth. And people don't like it. They call you blunt, harsh, tactless. They say you could have said that differently. What they mean is, you could have said it less truthfully. But here's what the science actually shows. Psychologist Michael Brook conducted research examining assertiveness and cognitive performance. His findings showed that highly assertive people, those who communicate directly without softening, consistently outperformed others on tasks of greater complexity. They were also more likely to approach problems from multiple angles and form independent judgments. The research suggested that direct communication isn't a social flaw. It's a marker of stronger cognitive function. Here's why this makes sense. Intelligent minds are efficiency-driven. Sugarcoating a message consumes cognitive resources, yours and theirs. Your brain skips the performance and goes straight to the signal. The advantage? People always know where they stand with you. In a world full of noise, that's rare. The ones who matter learn to value it. The ones who don't weren't useful to you anyway. You're not rude. You're just operating without a filter that was never designed for truth. It was designed for comfort. 2. You zone out mid-conversation. You're at a party. Someone is talking to you. You're nodding. You're making the right face. And then you're gone. Not because you're bored, not because you don't care. Your mind just drifted. People notice, they feel it, and they take it personally. They think you're dismissive, disrespectful, that you couldn't be bothered to stay present for 5 minutes. But here's what's actually happening inside your brain. Researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology measured the brain activity of over 100 people using MRI scanning. They then tested each person's intellectual and creative ability. The results were clear. People who reported more frequent mind wandering scored significantly higher on both intelligence and creativity tests. Their brains were also measurably more efficient. Lead researcher Eric Schumacher explained it this way. People with highly efficient brains may simply have too much cognitive capacity to stay locked on to routine input. When a conversation isn't demanding enough, their brain doesn't switch off, it redirects. It goes looking for something harder to work on. Think about what that means. Your brain isn't checking out. It's operating at a level where ordinary conversation isn't enough to fill it. So it doubles up. It runs a background process, turning over a problem, building an idea, making a connection. That's not rudeness. That's a brain running at full capacity, doing what it was built to do. The people who stay locked in every conversation without a single wandering thought, their brains aren't more engaged. They're just less busy. 3. You can't keep a normal sleep schedule. You were supposed to be up at 7. It's 1 a.m. and you're still awake. Not scrolling, not distracted, just thinking, reading, working. Your brain decided it wasn't done yet. People around you have made their feelings very clear. You're undisciplined, irresponsible, you'll ruin your health. Why can't you just go to bed at a normal time like everyone else? Here's the thing. There may be no such thing as a normal sleep schedule for a brain like yours. Psychologist Satoshi Kanazawa at the London School of Economics surveyed Americans in their 20s and mapped their sleep patterns against their IQ scores. The results were striking. Those with IQs above 125 went to bed significantly later, around 12:30 a.m. on weeknights and 1:45 a.m. on weekends. Those with average intelligence went to bed noticeably earlier across the board. The higher the IQ, the later the bedtime. Kanazawa's explanation goes deeper than just sleep preferences. He argues that higher intelligence is linked to the ability to override ancient evolutionary programming. Our ancestors had no reason to stay up past sundown. It served no purpose. Adapting away from that pattern, choosing to operate at night, is itself a marker of a brain that naturally pushes past inherited defaults. Your brain isn't broken. It's running on its own timetable. And while everyone else powered down hours ago, yours is just getting started. 4. You overthink everything. You said something 3 days ago. You've replayed it 17 times since. You picked apart the exact words you used, the tone, the timing, whether you should have said it differently, whether the other person took it the wrong way, whether you were wrong, whether they were. People around you have a simple solution. Just let it go. You can't. And they find that exhausting. They see it as a weakness, insecurity, an inability to move on. But what they're calling overthinking, psychology calls something else entirely. Researchers at Lakehead University in Ontario explained it this way. More verbally intelligent people are able to consider past and future events in far greater detail than others. They don't just remember what happened, they simulate it. They run it forward, backwards, and sideways. They stress test every angle. Here's what that actually means. Your brain doesn't switch off after an event because it's still working on it, still extracting data, still running the analysis. What looks like an inability to move on is actually a mind that refuses to leave information half processed. Your brain just refuses to settle for a shallow read on the world. 5. You talk to yourself out loud. You're working through a problem and you start talking. Not to anyone in the room, not on the phone, just out loud, to yourself. Running through the logic, narrating the steps, arguing both sides of the decision in real time. Someone walks in and catches you mid-sentence. The look on their face says everything. Slightly concerned, quietly amused. Like they've just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. You laugh it off, but somewhere underneath that, you've absorbed the message that talking to yourself is strange, a quirk, maybe even a warning sign. Here's what the science says instead. Researchers at Bangor University conducted a study measuring cognitive performance across two groups. One group read their task instructions silently. The other read them out loud, to themselves. The group that spoke aloud showed significantly better concentration and completed the task more efficiently. Here's why it works. When you verbalize a thought, you force it into a linear sequence. Vague, tangled thinking suddenly has to become organized and coherent enough to say out loud. That process alone sharpens it. You're not just thinking, you're also hearing yourself think. Two cognitive channels firing at once instead of one. So the next time someone catches you mid-monologue and gives you that look, smile. Your brain is just refusing to work at half capacity. 6. You get overwhelmed by noise. You're at a party and something starts happening that you can't fully explain. The background noise isn't background anymore. Every conversation, every scrape of a chair, every flicker of overhead lighting, it all lands with equal weight. You can't filter it, you can't tune it out, and at some point, you just need to leave. People call it being high maintenance, too sensitive, difficult. What they don't know is what's actually happening in your brain. A study published in the journal Neuropsychobiology by researcher Bianca Acevedo at UC Santa Barbara found that people high in sensory processing sensitivity don't just notice more, their brains literally process information more deeply than others. The brain regions responsible for awareness, memory consolidation, and deliberate thinking showed significantly higher activation. These are not anxious brains, they are thorough ones. Researcher Daria Zabalina found this same pattern in creative achievers. People who couldn't filter out irrelevant sensory input were the ones most capable of making unexpected connections between unrelated ideas. The very thing that makes a crowded room unbearable is the same thing that makes certain minds extraordinary. Your brain isn't broken. It's processing more than most. 7. You're sarcastic. You said something, you meant the opposite, and now someone's upset. Sarcasm gets written off as mean, passive-aggressive. But researchers at Harvard and Columbia didn't find that. They ran 4 experiments testing what sarcasm actually does to cognition, for the person using it and the person receiving it. Both groups showed the same result, measurably higher creativity immediately after a sarcastic exchange. The mechanism is abstract thinking. Sarcasm forces your brain to hold 2 conflicting meanings at once, what was said versus what was meant. Closing that gap is cognitively demanding. It activates the same thinking patterns behind creative problem solving. The researchers named their paper accordingly. The highest form of intelligence. The people who use sarcasm fluently, they're running a more sophisticated cognitive process than the people who take everything literally. Your humor didn't miss. Their processing did. 7 habits. Every single one of them has been called a flaw at some point. And for years, you've been quietly wondering if something is wrong with you. There isn't. The same traits that make you difficult to be around in certain rooms are the ones that make you exceptional in others. That's not a motivational line. That's what the studies show. You weren't built for small rooms. Stop apologizing for that. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and check out many other similar videos on the channel.